Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is 21st of August, now it's 12 o'clock, middle of the day by Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. As you can notice, I'm reporting today from this improvised studio, which means that came back to Moscow region from North Ossetia, Alania. And before I start sharing news, let me say thank to all of you for your kind words, for your good wishes, for safe travel. Well, travel was nice and easy, so thank you very much. Now let's and by the way, I will report from this improvised studio as long as we are renting this apartment. So that's been said. Let's talk about news now. Today's update is a little late, but as you can understand, we were almost 3 months in North Ossetia, Alania, and we came back yesterday late evening, and it did take some time to get ready, let's say this way, to adapt. So now let's talk about news, and first of all, let me share with you breaking news for this moment. So first of all, I will share with you information that this morning Ukrainian side, Zelensky and his associates, did try to strike in the direction of Moscow once again, and according to Russian officials and their statements and Russian media, 2 Ukrainian drones were shot down on their approach to Moscow, and unfortunately 2 civilians were injured in one of the places where Ukrainian drone fell down. Unfortunately, this is not the first and not the last time when Zelensky and his associates are trying to hit deep inside Russian territory, including in direction of Moscow. And as long as they are receiving financial, military, and all the other support, including with the intelligence and technologies from the Western elites and NATO member states, well, it's gonna be difficult from Russian side to completely eliminate any risks of such events taking place in the future. But yet again, today's strike did not achieve its goals, did not reach Moscow, but two civilians were injured in the place that one of these drones did fell down. And also, by the way, this morning there were some reports in Russian media and Russian language pages on different platforms that residents of Rostov did hear some loud noises, kind of explosion sounds in the city and surrounding areas. And well, Russian officials did make statement about it to make sure that there is no panic. And according to information that we are receiving, it was Russian fighter jets that were crossing supersonic speed, and whenever a plane is moving from subsonic to supersonic speed, loud noise is always happening. Kind of, it may sounded like an explosion, and according to Russian officials, this is exactly the sound that residents of Rostov did heard when Russian planes crossed this sound barrier. So there was no strikes on Rostov, no explosions, no nothing really. But because of this spread of information in internet that there was some explosion sounds in Rostov, officials did give a public explanation what did happen. Now let's continue with short summary of the situation on the front line. No extreme changes, no changes that can be called a breakthrough for anyone's side, in my reading of big picture. But let's go sector by sector, from southern wards up to northern ones. So Kherson region, it's mainly artillery duels between the sides and reckon operations. Now we can say with 100% certainty that Ukrainian sabotage group, quite a large sabotage group that was sent towards Russian settlement Kazachий Lager on the left bank of the Dnieper River, was neutralized. Many Russian media outlets and Russian independent sources of information did report that Russian forces conducted countermeasures, counter-offensive in direction of that small bridgehead that initially Ukrainian forces did manage to establish on the left bank, not far away from Kazachий Lager settlement, and almost entire this sabotage group was neutralized. There are different reports, but according to some, Ukrainian side lost up to 100 servicemen during the battles. Some report mention 150 Ukrainian servicemen, but in any case, that bridgehead was eliminated by Russian forces, and there were even videos on internet with dozens and dozens of trophies, military equipment and ammunition that Russian forces did manage to capture once they established control over that area that was previously for almost a week controlled by this Ukrainian sabotage group. So there is no Ukrainian bridgehead no more on the left bank in vicinity of Kazachий Lager. But by the way, they still have, Ukrainian forces still have their presence on the left bank, right next to destroyed Antonovsky Bridge, and Russian forces constantly are conducting artillery strikes in that direction, drone strikes, to make sure that Ukrainian forces don't have a chance to enlarge the bridgehead or develop the bridgehead in close vicinity from Antonovsky Bridge. And of course, there are constant fights between the sides for these small islands on Kherson River and in the Dnieper Delta, in the delta of this river. But yet again, at this point, nothing is happening that will influence overall situation on this sector. So I will call situation operational pause. Then next is Zaporozhye and the South Donetsk sectors of the front line. By the way, Russian forces were quite active when it comes to artillery duels. Also in this almost empty Kakhovka water reservoir area, during the previous days, there were some reports that Ukrainian forces began to strike yet again in direction of Energodar, in direction of Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Rumors did emerge that Ukrainian forces will conduct crossing of bed of this Kakhovka water reservoir, which is, as I mentioned, almost empty, and possibly to neutralize Ukrainian concentration of Ukrainian forces on the right bank of this reservoir. Russian side began actively shelling this area from air force, from artillery, and well, if Ukrainian side has any plans to conduct the crossing of Kakhovka water reservoir, probably those plans seriously distracted by these Russian strikes. But yet again, for now, left bank of Kakhovka reservoir under full control of Russian forces, and we can call situation also operational pause in this direction also. And now Zaporozhye and South Donetsk sectors of the front. As you remember, I did mention a couple of days ago, about a week ago, that Ukrainian side, Zelensky and his associates, did begin to use in direction of Rabotina, one of the most capable brigades of Ukrainian strategic reserves that are armed with Striker armored personnel carriers and the Challenger 2 main battle tanks. Well, nowadays almost all the channels are reporting about it, that Ukraine did deploy to this sector of the front their last strategic reserves, and well, we may even call this second wave of offensive, even though scale of Ukrainian, this local scale operations are not really close to scale that we see in the beginning of this counteroffensive in first days of July. But anyway, even if it's second wave of Ukrainian counteroffensive that we are now seeing, at least for this moment, Ukrainian forces didn't manage to achieve any success. They are constantly attacking Rabotna settlement, and according to latest news that I read, Russian forces are still holding to this settlement and at least southern parts of this settlement. This small, really small village, by the way, with only a few streets and a few dozens of buildings. So southern part of the settlement is still under Russian control. But I wouldn't be surprised if Russian forces will, according to Russian doctrine of maneuverable warfare, I would not be surprised if Russian forces will decide at some point to withdraw forces from this area and reinforce first line of defense of Russian army. But yet again, we remember that a few weeks ago there was some quite critical situation in Klishchevka area, where Ukrainian forces almost established full control over the Klishchevka, and me and many other commentators and even military experts were predicting that Russian forces will probably withdraw from Klishchevka, but it did not happen. We did see exactly the opposite. Russian side conducted offensive operations and regained control not just over the Klishchevka, but over all the areas that was in previous 3-4 weeks was taken by Ukrainian forces as a result of their local scale offensives. So we may see a similar situation in this area also. But anyway, if Ukrainian forces manage to establish control over the Rabotina, probably they will have a opportunity to say that eventually, after 3 months of this counteroffensive, they did reach first line of defense of Russian army, which begins right next to Rabotina settlement, by the way. So just imagine how difficult fight was for Ukrainian forces on the line of contact, and just imagine what will unleash on Ukrainian forces once they will reach first line of defense of Russian army, if they will manage to do so. It's gonna be hell for Ukrainian forces, I'm quite sure, and maybe because of it, we are almost on daily basis now receiving reports that some Ukrainian units are refusing, entire units are refusing to conduct offensive operations in Zaporozhye sector of the front line, in South Donetsk sector of the front line, in Kherson sector of the front line, and even on the northern sectors of the front, where initiative is totally in Russian hands. But when it comes to Zaporozhye region, I will call situation operational pause, because nothing at this moment happening that will influence overall situation on this sector. Ukrainian forces, despite their many attempts to achieve some breakthrough, they are quite unsuccessful, and it will stay this way. I believe it will stay this way. They would not be able to achieve any breakthrough in Zaporozhye, in South Donetsk, or any other sectors of this front line. But anyway, let's continue now. South Donetsk sector of the front, of course, main hotspot is Vremelsky salient here. And according to latest report, Russian forces did try to conduct local scale offensive operation in direction of Urozhaina and Staromayorskaya. There was heavy artillery shelling of Ukrainian positions in these directions, but I believe Russian forces were not trying to establish control over these two settlements. They were trying probably to not allow Ukrainian forces to free enough manpower to conduct, to continue their offensive in direction of Zavetное Желание, Zlatine Bajane, that's a Ukrainian name, but in Russian it's Zavetное Желание, as I understand, and in direction of Staromalinovka here. Even though there was some reports in previous 24 hours and in days before that Ukrainian forces probably will try to strike Staromalinovka from the eastern side by bypassing Zavetное Желание settlement, and maybe this has something to do with this small river here, because river crossing may be quite difficult on the northern part right next to Zavetное Желание. But anyway, at this moment, Ukrainian forces are not able to continue their local scale offensive operations, even though they are constantly receiving some reinforcements in this sector of the front also. So in my understanding, it's still operational pause. I mean, some may say that Ukraine did begin its second wave of offensive, but whatever they're gonna call it, I see operational pause on these sectors, on main bridgehead between Crimea and mainland Russia. Things may change tomorrow or day after, but at least for now, Ukrainian forces are unable to achieve any real success, really. When it comes to Donetsk direction, there are quite significant changes, interesting changes. On the southern flank of Donetsk direction, main hotspots are Marinka, Krasnogorovka, Avdiivka, of course. And we did have reports that Russian forces continued their local scale offensive operations in direction of Krasnogorovka, in direction of Avdiivka, and between these two settlements, Pervomayskaya settlement here, which is, according to some reports, Russian side already controls some parts of this settlement, and there are some few other small settlements there, but I believe Russian activization on Avdiivka direction mainly are connected with the South Donetsk situation on the South Donetsk sector of the front. I guess because Ukrainian logistical lines are passing through these settlements, Ukrainian controlled settlements on the Donetsk direction, and then are reaching Ugledar area and Vremyevsky salient, Vremyevsky ledge area on South Donetsk sector of the front line. I believe Russian forces are trying to cut these logistical lines that are used by Ukrainian grouping of forces in the South Donetsk sector. So if that's the case, then probably in coming days, Russian side will become even more active in Krasnogorovka, Avdiivka direction, maybe even in direction of Marinka, even though, at least for now, we don't have any report that Russian forces did manage to move forward significantly in Marinka area. And when it comes to northern flank of Donetsk sector, we have here Bakhmut or Artyomovsk and flanks of this city, where initiative is totally in Russian hands at this point. We had reports that Kiev did send additional reinforcements in the direction of southern flank of Bakhmut. Probably Kiev wanted to continue this local scale offensive operations in the direction of Kurdyumovka, Andreevka and Klishchevka, but at least for this moment we have reported that its Russian side is continuing to improve their positions in these sectors of the front. So initiative, at least for this moment, in Russian hands on the southern flank and also on northern flank. It's Russian forces that are conducting offensive operations, and I would not be surprised if we will see pincer movement, pincer offensive from Russian forces in direction of Konstantinovka and Chisov Yar once situation will finally resolve with this Ukrainian counteroffensive. Probably, at least for now, Russian military leadership probably still are concentrated significantly on this bridgehead between Crimea and mainland Russia, where main axis of Ukrainian counteroffensive is. But I guess it's only a matter of next few weeks when it will become absolutely obvious that Ukrainian counteroffensive did fail, and they will achieve nothing really. They would not be able to reach Tokmak, they would not be reach Melitopol, Berdyansk or Mariupol. And when this will, for me it's obvious now, and it was obvious from very beginning. Veterans of our community probably do remember that I was, for many months before this counteroffensive even began, was saying that if Zelensky's regime will conduct this counteroffensive, it will be suicidal for Ukrainian side, and it will be beginning of the end of Ukrainian armed forces as a more or less capable entity, and we are seeing exactly that. Entire this summer we are seeing exactly that, beginning of the end of Ukrainian armed forces as more or less capable entity, because Zelensky and his associates, they are sacrificing their last reserves in during this counteroffensive. But I guess militaries need more time. Of course they need more time. They need 100% certainty that Ukrainian forces would not be able to achieve any breakthrough during this counteroffensive, and once it will become obvious, then the Russian side probably will begin to conduct its large-scale offensive operations in Donetsk, in central sectors of the front, including Donetsk sector, and also, of course, on the northern sectors of the front line, where initiative is totally in Russian hands for many months now. So this is when it comes to Donetsk direction, and next is northern sectors, Seversk area, Liman area, and Kupiansk area, where, as I said, initiative is totally in Russian hands. And at this point, only question remains when the Russian Defense Ministry will greenlight a large-scale offensive operation. When it will happen during this summer or in the first half of the spring. And as I mentioned, it all depends. I guess it all depends on when situation will finally resolve with this Ukrainian counteroffensive. But overall, if we take in account entire front, it's still operational pause. It's still operational pause on the southern sectors. It's Ukrainian forces that are trying to conduct some local scale offensive operations and achieve something. They are pretty much unsuccessful. And in northern sectors, initiative is in Russian hands, and as I said, the only question is when Russian side will begin large-scale offensive operation. And this is it for a quick or short summary of the situation on the front line. Now let's continue with some other news, and we have RIA Novosti's report, according to which, this news just confirms what I just said minutes ago. According to statements of Denis Pushilin, head of DPR, Russian forces did conduct local-scale offensive operations in direction of Avdiivka, and establish control over the three Ukrainian strongholds during the local-scale clashes. And at the same time, Denis Pushilin was asked about situation in Marinka, and he said that at this moment there are no significant changes on the Marinka area. And the interest towards Marinka is quite understandable. As many of you probably did see, I did share on I share on my Telegram quite a few times video from Marinka. This town, this small town, is almost completely destroyed. Not almost, completely destroyed. There is no even single building in that city that is recognizable even. Its entire city is in ruins. So I guess society, it's understandable that society wants to see this town liberated finally and rebuilt, because this fight for Marinka continues for quite a long time now. Anyway, let's continue. I guess once Russian forces will will conduct large-scale offensive operations, whenever it's gonna be this summer or in the spring or maybe in the winter, Marinka probably will be one of the first settlements that will be fully liberated by Russian forces. Let's continue now. RIA Novosti is reporting that Russian armed forces destroyed Ukrainian military train in Avdiivka direction, which is, once again confirms previous reports that Russian forces are significantly active lately in Avdiivka direction, and to distract these logistical lines that are connecting Ukrainian controlled areas of Donetsk direction with South Donetsk sector of the front, Russian forces are beginning to destroy these communication lines, and well, we have reports about destruction of yet another military train or echelon of Ukrainian armed forces in Avdiivka direction. If you remember, a few days ago I did share on my Telegram video footage with destruction of yet another Ukrainian military train with ammunition. Let's continue. RT is reporting that Russia reveals how it would respond to an attack on Belarus. Well, for many of us, of course, it's clear how Russia will respond if anybody, any state will attack Belarus. But we have official statement from a Russian envoy in Belarus, and he said that Boris Gryzlov, by the way, name of Russian envoy in Belarus, and he said that Russia will treat any attack on Belarus as an act of aggression against itself, using all of its military capabilities to retaliate, which is quite understandable. After all, Kremlin did deploy tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus for a reason, isn't it? And the main reason was to send clear message to Polish leadership, to NATO leadership, and to leadership of ruling Western class that Belarus is untouchable. So let's hope everyone did received and understood this quite clear message. If not, then, well, Boris Gryzlov is stating officially that Russia will respond with all means necessary, with all military capabilities to protect Belarus, and with all means, or all military capabilities means nuclear weapons also. Let's continue now. And by the way, to be honest, to be frank, I don't believe leadership of Poland is so crazy that they will attack Belarus. I just don't see it. They do use this difficult relationship with Belarus and Russia to deploy military forces to their eastern borders. But in my understanding, this has been done to prepare their forces and the ground for invasion of Western Ukraine, to establish control over the Western Ukraine. Not for invasion, not to invade Belarus or Kaliningrad of Russian region, because it would be suicidal, truly suicidal for not just Polish elites, but for Poland, for Europe, and for the world, I believe, because well, in that case, the world very quickly may spiral into full-scale nuclear exchange. And that would be it, probably. That would be the end of this world as we know it. But anyway, let's continue. And TASS news agency is reporting about statement or a comment of Maria Zakharova, official representative of Russian Foreign Ministry, when she was asked about statements of Zelensky about possibility that Ukraine will give up some territories in favor of Russia for exchange of joining NATO. And Zelensky, during press conference in Denmark, when he was asked about it, said that, well, he is not against to give Russia Belgorod region, to leave to Russia Belgorod region for exchange of joining NATO. And well, you tell me how inadequate, even if Zelensky was trying to joke, how inappropriate and cheap that joke is, really. Taking in account desperate situation of Ukrainian armed forces on the front line. And of course, no one can take Zelensky seriously no more and his statements, and Maria Zakharova is no exception. And she did respond that, well, she said that probably Zelensky was experiencing some overdose during that statement, which is maybe true, by the way. Which is maybe true because, well, entire world is talking about Zelensky and his drug problems. And, well, Maria Zakharova did you know, she could not answer seriously. she could not comment seriously on Zelensky because it's impossible. So she just did ironize. She was sarcastic and said that probably Zelensky was under, you know, overdose, and it may be true. It may be true. How can anyone take seriously Zelensky and his criminal, drug addict, Nazi and terrorist associates? Man, come on. Let's continue. And TASS news agency is reporting that well, Denmark did agree to, or at least made the statement that they will deliver to Zelensky and his associates some 19 F-16 fighter jets. Before Denmark, Netherlands did also made statements that they will give Zelensky and his associates a few dozens of F-16s. Well, I'm gonna remain on my original position or original take or reading of this picture with Western-made fighter jets, and I will say that I don't believe Zelensky and his associates will ever have real control over any Western-made fighter jets. In my understanding, F-16s, Eurofighters, Swedish Gripens or French Mirage 2000s or maybe even Rafales will be introduced to the battlefield only when Poland and some allies of Poland from NATO in Russian anti-Russian coalition will send their forces into Western Ukraine. Same time, they will probably try to establish a no-fly zone over the Western Ukraine, and well, to achieve this, they will use planes that they have. And in this case, we are talking about F-16s also. That's the only way we will, in my reading of this picture, we will see introduction of Western fighter jets to this battlefield. I don't think, despite these statements from Denmark and Netherlands, I don't think they will really send F-16s to Zelensky and his associates. I just don't believe in this. But that's the kind of statements that we are receiving from the West. And by the way, one of the rivals of Biden, Robert Kennedy Jr. did make a comment about deliveries of possible deliveries of F-16 to Ukraine, and he said that it will not help in any ways, or it will not prevent collapse of Ukrainian armed forces, but this type of step will definitely enrich military-industrial complex, which is, I mean, true. Of course, even if my reading of picture is mistaken, and even if these Western-made fighter jets, including F-16s, will be delivered to Zelensky and his associates, it will, of course, would not change outcome of this conflict, because I'm 100% sure Russia will emerge from this conflict victorious. No doubts about it, not even for a second. So statement from Robert Kennedy Jr. is absolutely correct. If anyone will benefit, and this will not save Ukrainian armed forces from collapse also, these planes. So only benefits will receive just a military-industrial complex, because they will have a reason to produce even more F-16s or maybe some other type of fighter jets. So they will receive billions and billions. Why not? From their perspective, well, that's a good deal, I guess, because they only care about money. Let's continue. And TASS news agency is reporting about statement that was made by French politician, leader of French party Patriots. I don't know, by the way, how influential this party is in France, for what they stand, but leader of this party, Florian Philippot, did make statement that despite he made statement that Netherlands will not deliver promised F-16s to Ukraine, because in November there will be elections in Netherlands, and the globalist current prime minister of this state, Mark Rutte, will be replaced. And this person leader of Patriots Party of France, believes that victory in Netherlands will be on side of a party of freedom in November, and this party is against deliveries of F-16s to Ukraine and against further escalation with Russia whatsoever. So, well, I'm not expert in French politics, internal politics, or in Netherlands internal politics. I guess this individual, Florian Filippo, knows what he's talking about, and Mark Rutte, this globalist puppet, will no longer be Prime Minister of Netherlands after November. And if that's the case, then, well, according to, yet again, to this French politician, this party of freedom that may become victorious or at least achieve some significant influence in Netherlands, that party is against of further escalation and probably blocked any decisions to send F-16s to Ukraine. Anyway, let's continue. And by the way, Scott Ritter, one of the voices of reason from USA, did made also comment on F-6 topic of F-16s, and he said that even if these planes will be delivered to Ukraine, it will take about months maximum for Russian side to take them down, which is I guess true, because I don't believe any fourth generation fighter jet or even fifth generation fighter jet will have any chance really to survive a long time in the skies in situation where Russia has deployed integrated air defense systems. So I don't think anybody can argue with Scott Ritter on this point. But yet again, me personally, I'm remaining on my original take on entire this topic of F-16s, and well, I don't believe Zelensky and his associates will ever have any real control over any Western fighter jets. We will see those fighter jets being introduced to the battlefield only when Western Ukraine will become under control of some NATO member states under leadership of Poland. Only question is, will this coalition, anti-Russian coalition under leadership of Poland, stay on the in the western regions of Ukraine only, or they will try to establish control over the central and southern regions of Ukraine, also from Kiev to Odessa region, because it's a huge difference, isn't it? If they will stay in the western regions of Ukraine, if they will try to establish no-fly zone there and so on, Moscow may make some heavy statements, but well, I don't think there will be some direct clashes between the sides, because well, I don't see why Moscow should care that much about Western Ukraine, which is a stronghold of Ukrainian Nazi ideology, by the way. But if this anti-Russian coalition will try to establish control over the Kiev and southern regions of Ukraine, including Odessa, then we will see a very different approach from Moscow, because I don't think Russian side will tolerate such a behavior, and in that case we will most definitely see direct clashes between the sides. So let's hope whenever Poland and some other NATO member states gonna send their forces in Western Ukraine, they will stay there. And if they will try to introduce no-fly zone, they will do it just on the Western Ukraine, because otherwise they may find themselves in very, very difficult situation, because Moscow will respond with heavy hand, no doubts about that. But anyway, let's continue. How long is this video? 39 minutes. Wow. I will go through at least a few headlines more, and I will end this update here. So RT is reporting that according to article in Financial Times, US does not have enough ballistic missiles for Ukraine. Well, you tell me how crazy Western elites really are, that they are now talking about not just deliveries of fighter jets to Zelensky and his associates, but also about deliveries of ballistic missiles, which may never happen. even if US does have enough ballistic missiles. But you know, my take on entire this topic of deliveries of weapons to Zelensky in his associates is that I guess Washington and London with Brussels are trying to push Zelensky and Kiev regime in general to continue this so-called counteroffensive, to make sure that Russia will, and to do so, they are promising more and more weapons, by the way. That's all it is in my understanding, because at this point, to me, it's quite clear that main goal for Washington and London is, together with Polish elites, let's say, together with Warsaw, is to make sure that Russia will take care of vast majority of Ukrainian armed forces, so that once this anti-Russian coalition under the leadership of Poland will enter Western Ukraine, they will receive as minimal resistance from Ukrainian forces, including from Ukrainian nationalist units or Nazi units, as possible. And that's it, really. And all these talks about Ukraine's deliveries of weapons to Ukraine and so on is just one of the ways how Washington and London are pushing Zelensky to continue to sacrifice their last strategic reserves. That's it. Let's continue. And Rinovost is reporting that there was unsafe engagement between US F-35 fighter jet and Russian Su-35 fighter jets over the skies of Syria. This information based on reports from Russian Defense Ministry, according to which on some 10 kilometers altitude, F-35 did approach Russian Su-35 with unsafely, let's say this way. Lately we did see significant deterioration of situation relationships between Russian forces and US coalition forces in Syria, including on the ground and in the air. This type of incidents are taking place more often, and US military bases becoming under constant fire lately. And one may hope that sides will manage to avoid direct confrontation on the ground or in the air, but hard to tell because yet again, because of this extreme aggressiveness of Biden's administration. That's it, really. And as we all know, Western so-called elites have no reverse gear, and until they feel force, and until they are forced to back down, they will not. And I'm afraid at some point Russia will showcase its force. That's it. Let's continue, and that is reporting that Ukraine issues new warning to Israel. Well, that's kind of topic for Clown World. Probably all of you are familiar with this segment of Clown World on Alex Christoforos programs. Ukraine is issuing a new warning to Israel. I mean, wow. Zelensky and his associates truly lost contact with reality, for sure. And this time, the march from Kiev is have been done because, according to Kiev, Ukrainian refugees or Ukrainians was not really treated well in Israel. That's the claim. And by the way, if some Ukrainian refugees end up in Israel with some Nazi tattoos and Nazi symbolics on the dress or on the bodies, I would not be surprised if Israelis will, take them out even, or knock them out. So maybe there were some instances when Israelis did see this kind of displacement of some Nazi symbolic or some arrogant behavior from Ukrainian side, and I guess Israelis didn't like it, and well, maybe some of those individuals from Ukraine was treated not really well, but well, after all, I don't think Israelis will ever have any sympathies towards Nazis, by the way. And Ukrainians should know that. Nazi Ukrainians, I believe. And if they, you know, if they choose Israel to go to and ask for asylum, then they chose wrong country. That's it, really. But anyway, title itself is quite something. Ukraine issues new warning to Israel, man. Anyway, let's continue. RT is also reporting that some 70% of Germans want a new Chancellor. New poll says, well, I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all. I said quite a few times before that current leadership of Germany probably are most anti-German leadership that this country or this nation ever had. And same I will say about Biden's administration. Biden's administration is probably worst administration US ever had. And I'm not at all surprised that majority of electorate is cannot wait to when they will have a chance to replace these idiots that are ruining Germany by being high-ranking officials. From Scholz to Annabella Baerbock, I mean, these disgraceful people truly are ruining Germany, major economy of Europe. What you gonna say? Anyway, let's continue. And well, also artists report that Serbian President Vučić did give an interview to Tucker Carlson, and that interview, a little episode of that interview was highlighted by Tucker Carlson, as I understand. And during that interview, Vučić said that he believes that this conflict between Russia and Ukraine and EU's involvement did crush European economy. And well, he's correct, isn't it? I would not say that European economies are collapsing. No, of course not. But involvement of European elites in this conflict, this sanctions war definitely did some significant damage, I guess, to European economies. And well, if Vučić is saying this, I mean, he has no less information that we do have. I mean, he has much more information, including information that is not public. And I don't think anybody will disagree with him or argue on this point, that this involvement of EU in this conflict with Russia definitely did harm European economy. And by the way, also TASS News Agency's report, I don't want this update to be extremely long, and it is, well, just the headlines, So TASS News Agency is reporting that diplomatic mission of ECOWAS in Niger did failed, according to this report. Last 2 days, there were some negotiations in Niger between a delegation of ECOWAS and current leadership of this state. But, well, these negotiations failed. Let's hope ECOWAS countries will not invade Niger. But at this point, anything is possible. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that China is openly supporting new members to be received in BRICS to become a bigger organization. I did also read today that South Africa, and yes, it's mentioned here also, that South Africa is also in support of increasing number of members of BRICS, which is logical, understandable, and I will say inevitable, because almost on monthly basis, BRICS is gaining more and more popularity in the world, and BRICS have been seen by majority of this world as a kind of alternative of G7, let's say, and this interest will only grow because world is moving in the direction of multipolarity, and this process is unstoppable at this stage, I believe. TASS news agency is reporting very interesting news, by the way. I wanted to share this news with you, that Afghanistan export to Russia 2,000 tons of grapes. 2,000 tons of grapes, and there are some negotiations between the sides to increase exports from Afghanistan of some other produce, agricultural produce. Also, this transit route is going through Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is connecting Afghanistan and Russia, and well, great news, by the way. I can only hope that relationship between Russia and Afghanistan will increase and become better and better year by year, on year by year level, and Russia will be helpful for Afghanistan for Afghani people, for citizens of Afghanistan, to deal with their economical issues, social issues, and so on. We never see Afghanistan, even though there was a conflict between Soviet Union and some part of Afghanistan society. Me personally never see Afghanistan as enemies, and I believe vast majority of citizens in Russia and former Soviet Union has similar approach. And well, I will only applaud if Russia will be helpful to for Afghanistan, to develop Afghanistan peacefully and to see success in that state. They deserve it, by the way. So many decades of war. Just imagine how tired citizens of Afghanistan are, and how much they need peaceful development. So hopefully Russia will be one of the major countries that will help Afghanistan to deal with economical and social issues and to develop as a successful state. And few more updates. RT is also reporting that Russian citizens become top foreign buyers of property in one of the NATO states, and we are talking about Turkey. In this case, well, not surprising really, because Europe is almost closed nowadays for citizens of Russia, and I guess rich citizens want to invest their money somewhere, not just inside Russia but also outside Russia, and they did find Turkey as a interesting place to invest, including in property. And well, good for them, good for Turkey, what can I say? But it's quite interesting, isn't it, that despite all this pressure from the West, Russian economy is doing well, and well, many citizens of Russia also doing well, and they have enough funds to invest in foreign states, including in property market, and they are becoming #1 investor in Turkey's property sector. Well, interesting. Also, RT, by the way, is reporting that Iranian oil exports to China hit 10 years high, which is also great news. Because this time more diverse Chinese energo market is, or imports to China is, Chinese imports of energy is better for security of the region, I believe. So yes, it's only good if Iran will even double its current export to China. So China will have a source of energy from Iran, China will have source of energy from Saudi Arabia, from some other Gulf states, and also from Russia. So more diverse these routes of oil deliveries are to China, better. I'm quite sure about it. And by the way, this news, I have to say a few words about it. Unfortunately, a Russian lunar mission didn't manage to conduct successful landing operation, successful landing on the moon. Probably you already heard about it. Russian lunar probe crashed during the descent to the moon's surface. But well, it was just first step for a long time. It was a first step in the long time since Russia did not conduct any programs to towards moon. And well, there will be second and third steps, and eventually Russia will manage to conduct successful lunar mission, and Russia will return in space exploration big time. That's the main point that I want to make. And by the way, when it comes to lunar expeditions, on 23rd of August, Indian lunar probe will land on the moon. So let's wish success to Indian space program and engineers and scientists. Hopefully their program will successfully land the spacecraft on the moon, because it will be success not just for India but also for entire world. And this is it for now. Update is quite long, but there were so many news really. And after all, I had 2 days off, 1 day off really. Saturday was my day off, and Sunday I was on the way from North Ossetia, Alania to Moscow region, and yesterday I did not have reports, and there was so many news that I want to talk about, and hopefully you will find this update interesting, and if so, please click that like button, leave some commentary about any topic you like, and if you can, please share links to my videos or my channel with your friends on Twitter, Facebook, Telegram, or any other platform that you are active on. And if you think this channel, this project is interesting, useful, deserves to exist in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support with small donations through PayPal, buy me a coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. You will see link under this video in description box. I wish you a great day, great successful week, and yes, this is it for now. Take care. See you soon.